And so if you have people that are able to take that in and adapt, and not think that they know how it all works completely, then you end up growing together. Your whole team, and your project grows into something much greater than it could have been if it was just done one specific way.
In the distant future, vampires rule the night, but their numbers are dwindling. One podcast is unlike all the others. Half human, half vampire. This is Lefty Speaks, the official podcast for Vampire Hunter D.
Then our next point after rewrites and hiring writers, locking your scripts and storyboarding. This is really, really important for animated adaptation, because in live action, we've had some of the best moments in scripted storytelling because somebody ad-libbed something and they kept it. Well, that works when you can do multiple takes and the director can go, give me something different. You have fun with it. Go off, script, do whatever you want. With animation, that it's a little too expensive. You're not talking about today, especially when everything is digital, how much is a little bit of hard drive space? You're shooting on a couple terabyte hard drive attached to your camera. A couple extra takes is nothing. But for animation, you do not want to have to reanimate your sequences. That's how you go bankrupt. So you lock your script, you then do your storyboards, and it is always, I think, with animation even more tempting because of the length of time it takes, and you become so familiar with your scripts and what you're doing, that joke you thought was brilliant, or the line that you thought was brilliant when the script was first written, and you are like, okay, we're good, we're going to lock it. 2 years into production, you're looking back going, is it really good? Do we trust past us? But you have to trust past team, because there is a problem that you become too familiar with your work because of how long you've had to stick with it. So there that is also, I think, a trial that you face every time of, okay, I'm not going to second guess myself into oblivion. We've got to finish. So it is important to lock your script and your story, and get your storyboards done, which for animation, you turn into what we call an animatic. Do you remember, for people who've seen it, like a little flip book where you turn the pages and it looks like the person's walking, and so think of that as your animatic. It's your storyboards that you do scratch voice to, and you link them together real quick, so it looks like a really, really rough animation, like something out of like the early 1900s kind of drawing look. But that's your storyboard phase, and it lets you play with it. We've talked before, and some of our early episodes, we gave examples out of Kawajiri's storyboards for Bloodlust. And I gave some examples where what ended up in the final movie was slightly different than what was in the storyboard. Like a wreck was in the foreground versus the background, small things like that. But by and large, what you saw in the storyboards was what came to life in the animation. And that's a really, really important bit, because it's what guides your animation team. It's what helps you stay on point and on budget.
Yeah.
Don't Don't go over budget. So after storyboarding, which Brandon, I'd love if you talked a little bit about, in Iyanu, like that transition period from script lock to storyboard and how that flowed into the start of production.
So when we were done with the writers, well, when we got a script locked, it took quite a while to get our scripts locked because there was a lot of backwards and forwards and back and forth, I should say. The biggest issue we had, and I mentioned this sort of, was we did not do, and it was a mistake that I made, we did not do timed table reads. And we needed to make sure that we came, again, under 22 minutes. So what wound up happening is we even had a script that ended up at 44 minutes when we did it was crazy because we weren't thinking about certain things when we were writing. And we kept getting leaner and leaner in our scripting in terms of a scene description. And one of the things we had to learn was to pare back on scene description, because when you read that during a timetable read, that adds time. Because in theory, 1 page equals 1 minute. But animation can be a little bit wacky, particularly for fight sequences. So we learned some valuable lessons there, because when we sent it off to our directors, our supervising director, they were like, this is way too long. You guys got to do something about it. Our line producer was getting increasingly frustrated about the length of the scripts. So once we figured out how to get it down to 21 minutes and 30 seconds, they were sent off. And our storyboarding and directing team was not in LA. They were in St. Louis. So we were doing a lot of stuff remotely. And it worked out okay. But there was a whole lot of figuring out how to make scenes shorter, leaner, and faster. Because even after we got it down to 21:30, fight sequences threw the metric off. So then we figured out how to do that. And then we also had to figure out a way to give directors time to showcase show, don't tell, which is rule number 1 in any visual medium.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, we needed to get those down to about 19 minutes, so that we could have fight sequences that didn't last like 2 seconds. So those were considerations we learned along the way. And there was a lot of money spent because we did have to reanimate. And that was a big deal, and those were things we learned. But by the time we got to season 2, and we knew where season 2 was ending, and we knew where the second movie was going to be, we had a lot more figured out. And then, and I'm saying that now, but then I had to do a massive rewrite of season 2 because it was something we had to change, like a Jenga piece. And we did pull out a Jenga piece and everything fell apart. So I had to basically rebuild the spine for roughly half of season 2 manually. And that was also a learning experience, but it wasn't a bad one. It was a very valuable thing. So in animation, you have to realize it is all art is collaborative unless you're, a novelist or a painter. But when you're talking about digital or electronic entertainment, you're working with a whole lot of other people. And you have to learn how to manage them and also let them breathe. So I wasn't going to stop the storyboard artist from making a change to a sequence if it made the sequence better. Everything was not precious to me. And that's something you learn. You learn certain things you fight for, but the majority of it is like, you're making this better and cheaper. I'm not fighting with you. And that's really the lesson we got from that.
I think of something my boss, a guy I worked for in college, told me. He said that it's something he learned from a guy he worked for when he was in college. You don't have to be the best at every aspect of your business.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But you do need to have a general idea of how all of it goes together so that you can hire somebody who's better at a specific aspect of it than you are, and then let them be better at that part of it, which I think is part of the problem. For a lot of companies, they'll hire amazing and talented people and then micromanage it to death.
Yep.
Like, why did you hire an eagle if you never let it spread its wings?
Yeah.
when you move, yeah, I love that point. If your experienced storyboard artists are giving you a, hey, we think this sequence should change and it'll make it better, that's part of the review process that you got to debate, but give credit where credit's due. Again, don't be the narcissist that everything's your way or the highway, because that's how you get disaster. Other people could have good ideas too, and let them have credit. Don't try and steal people's credit. That is the best way to ruin people being willing to contribute and really work to try and make things better. Never steal credit from others. You're just burning bridges and salting the earth. Don't do it. For production itself, you've got to remember, again, you're fighting time and money, because everything's expensive and you've got a limited time window. So you've got to make sure that you move with proper direction so that your directors can work with your animators at all levels of animation, because you've got your key art, you've got your in-betweening. There's a lot that goes into your animation pipeline, particularly if you're working around the world with it, which a lot of animation does. You'll have studios in different parts of the world working on it. If you get a call at 3 a.m, well, that's part of it.
Oh, yeah.
So, I know, Brandon, for you all, you had voice talent in multiple countries. So
Mainly
you had recording
Nigeria.
sessions in multiple
Mainly
countries.
Nigeria.
Mainly
Yeah.
Nigeria. And if anybody's ever held a job where you had to deal with large time zone differences,
Yeah.
that requires some planning and scheduling. So you've
was
got to
difficult.
you've got to pay attention to it. I remember just out of college, I had a job with a major cruise line. Well, if you have ships all over the world, that's paying attention to a lot of different time zones. And so that was a completely new way of thinking for me out of college. And it's something that I hope I have kept the lesson learned, which is applicable in the entertainment endeavors when we're all over the world. So when you talk about the actual production phase, it's where the majority of your money is spent. It's where you've hired the most people. It's the most time and resource intensive, and you've really got to be organized. Excel and your calendar are your friend. And if they're not, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
Is there anything for you guys that stand out to you that you think would be, because I'm a little scared to dive too deep in the nitty gritty of what's involved in production, just because it's such a involved topic. I don't think we have time to do it justice.
We could always continue the conversation, because a production conversation could also talk about all of our collective experiences and lessons learned, both good and bad. And that could be, we can talk about that a bit and then jump into the marketing and distribution phase, which is a whole other very long conversation. So we could continue this, because production requires, there's 50,000 documentaries on production alone.
Agreed. Agreed.
So,
yeah.
I think we'll sum production up as, it's the lion's share of what an audience gets to consume. It's the meat and bones of what makes the screen. And then post-production is refining that. And hopefully improving it, making it better, getting in your effects, getting in your sound, making sure all of that matches. And in animation, you're also going to have to make sure you've got clean voice recording and everything matches up. Post-production could also involve the reanimation of the lips, the mouth, to match localization. That can also
Yeah.
be a really important step, because that can really throw people if you've got a dub and you're getting this, but what you're hearing is not matching that. It's those little things that pull people out of a story and ruin it for the immersion. A lot of things go into post-production, and I would encourage everyone, look up a Foley stage.
Oh, yeah, God.
So Foley, if memory serves correct, but I'm dyslexic, so please don't hold me to that 100%. But Foley stage is the art of mimicking and recreating the sounds that couldn't necessarily be captured in the original production. This is really poignant in live action, but for animation, there was no filming. So you've got to insert in, the sound of footsteps or the wind blowing. That's the Foley artists. And this is what I would consider kind of one of the many unsung heroes of making great motion picture adaptations. A friend of mine got her master's for music, for scoring, composition. The John Williams, the Hans Zimmer thing. And one of their assignments was to take a movie and a sequence and write music that absolutely didn't match what was the final product of that film or show, to really just change the whole feel and meaning of it by changing the music. And it's amazing what that does. So, that's post-production in a really quick and dirty nutshell. Last point we'll talk about is marketing and distribution. This, in my mind, I would throw into this category merchandising and what you sell, because your merchandising effort, I think, should be tied in with your marketing effort. If you notice, look at any Disney franchise, the toys are rolling out while you're seeing the marketing before the movie's released. And your product, where you've placed it in stores, where people are seeing it, that's building your brand and visual recognition of your characters. So,
I mean, you want full saturation, right? I mean, you want like when our Silent Hill movie came out, we timed it so that the video game was coming out around the same time. All the merchandise, whether it's clothes, plushies, everything happened at the same time. We also had, the Universal Halloween Horror Nights, we had our maze going on at the same time. So you literally release your album at the same time. So it's, now it would be streaming on Spotify. Back then Spotify wasn't out yet. But you want to have it all timed. If there's interviews, there's articles, there's podcasts, you try and organize it so that it's all popping around that same time, so you're getting that maximum saturation, and you're cutting through all the white noise that is everything else. Because a bad rainstorm can like, for example, when Silent Hill came out, East Coast got a rainstorm that flooded New York City and a lot of other places, and that really hit our box office. So notice we saw that change. And so with animation, I think that's relatively similar. Whether it's live action or animation, I think it's still in that their structure, marketing, PR, marketing, distribution is a lot the same.
And streaming really did change a lot of the landscape for that. Day and date, VOD or video on demand release. So there's a lot to navigate today. with, how it's distributed. Because one of the things I like about streaming is that it is in many ways easier for people to access things. But part of the problem with streaming is we have so many competing platforms that it's like old cable.
Yep.
Why do I need a bundle of 400 cable channels? Well, you need the whole bundle so you have access to everything. Well, okay, wait. So you're telling me I need a subscription to Showtime and Paramount Plus and Disney Plus and HBO Max and Netflix and Hulu. I think it's cyclical, as we were talking about at the beginning. For years now, you couldn't get anything original made. Before that, original scripts were the thing. Now we've finally seen some original scripts get sold again. Time always marches forward, so where we'll be in 2 years, none of us can tell you. So we're all just going to have to adjust as we go. Be flexible, be curious.
Yeah, I mean, this age of distribution is sometimes counterproductive to creativity, and I feel that, if I have HBO Max and I'm watching Goodfellas and the next week Goodfellas is gone, that bothers me a lot. And then I have to get Paramount Plus to watch Goodfellas, and I'm not doing that. So what I've done is just go back to physical media. Matt Damon, I forgot what show he was on. He was talking about the death of the ancillary market, which was the DVD rental and sale marketplace. And I feel that if there was a way we could get back to that, I know it's not really probable, but I feel that distribution ultimately can save everybody again if they decide to make an effort to push physical media so that people actually own things and are not tethered to streamers, which can just throw things away and shift them and force you to buy 500 different streaming platforms.
Yeah, well, that's where the indie studios and indie are completely against each other, because an indie project really needs that, the sales of DVDs and and Blu-rays, or they need that initial investment, while a studio doesn't want you to own anything, because they know that eventually you're gonna pay that streamer subscription. I mean, like with Sushi Girl, it's done the rounds. I mean, Magnolia's our distributor, and we had a great initial DVD Blu-ray run. But after that, I mean, like currently I don't know which streamer it's currently available on. It was on what Vudu for a while, and then it was on Netflix. It's kind of done the rounds, and now it's probably sold as a package, with eight or 10 other movies kind of floating from one streamer to the other. Yeah.
And then you've got a lot of things that are lost in the legal sea, if you will,
or the
floating along that have no legal stream.
Yeah.
And the problem with then trying to find something is you run the risk of, has somebody done something malicious with it? So yeah, it is crazy. And I hope over time we find better ways to deal with things as the market adjusts. I remember when hearing if I was too young at the time to be a part of this, but going back and hearing stories about, VHS was supposed to be the death of movies, and the film industry was absolutely petrified of VHS destroying, theatrical distribution, and, just the film industry was going to die because of VHS, this evil new technology. And then home video sales became just a juggernaut category that they couldn't live without now. And then the internet, and then DVD, then just.
And we're fast moving
There's
into
so
a
much
new one. Yep. And new models.
So much doom saying So marketing and distribution, it's also really, really important, because it doesn't matter how good a product you've got if no one knows you've got it.
Yep, that's huge.
Yep.
So you've got to do your best to make sure people know you've got it and make it accessible to them. You may have the greatest thing since sliced bread, but if it's only available in a obscure, really difficult way to get to, So I hope you all have enjoyed our incredibly abbreviated at times explanation and discussion on how do you get from the start to the finish. And we glossed over some of the things that we've talked about in the past of, what goes into convincing a distributor or a network to pick up your project. That is a whole other can of worms that, your development package, your art, your script, all of that plays a part of it. Who who your agent is, who your friends know. So there's a ton of layers and lots of complexity to it. I wish it were a little more straightforward, but it is very much not a straightforward thing. There's no magic formula to it. It's not like a chemistry or a math equation where you just, you go down the line, you follow the instructions. There's guidelines. There's the usual methods that hopefully work. So we thank you all for joining us today, and we wish you happy hunting, and we will see you in the next one. And if you have questions or something specific you'd like us to expound upon, please hop on our Discord. We've got a bunch of different channels, so toss it in one that is relevant for what you're wanting to ask about, and we'll see if we can't address it and give you our 2 cents on it. So thank you all very much for joining us, and this has been another Lefty Speaks.
Thank you for listening to Lefty Speaks, the official Vampire Hunter D podcast, hosted by Brandon Easton, Neal Fischer, and Scott McLean. This podcast is created by Unified Pictures and 9 Realms. Narration by Lauren Evallen-Muller. Recording and editing by 9 Realms. Produced by Scott McLean and Ian E. Muller. Based on the works created by Hideyuki Kikuchi. Happy hunting.